Okay, this next question comes to us from a larger corporation that has a committee, a patent review committee, to evaluate ideas to determine whether or not someone should file a patent on them. So hopefully within your enterprise you have more ideas than you have budget to protect them, so that you can selectively pick the best ideas, the ones that are most likely to be valuable to spend money on as you build out your patent portfolio. So there are a lot of people that will evaluate patents after they've issued, right? And you have a lot more data and you have some perspective at that point. But as you're creating innovation, of course, it's something that doesn't exist out there. So it's hard to know. There aren't infringers yet. You don't know if the product's going to be successful or not. There's a lot of guesswork involved. So I'm going to go through 6 or 7 things or questions you can ask as you look at these ideas to evaluate which ones are most worthy of your precious budget. So the best place to start is, the idea or the patent is going to cover a feature or a product. And what's the value of that to the marketplace? Is there going to be lots of revenue? Is it going to be the sort of thing, when you look out over the next 20 years, which is the patent term, that is going to be crucial to driving shareholder value for your enterprise? Some evaluation of the market and the potential of it at this early stage, right? And it's very much guesswork. And then as you look at that, you've got to think about how core it is to the company and their revenue. So sometimes it's a very great idea, it's very revolutionary, but the profits could fit in a thimble, right? Versus some other idea that is not so technologically advanced, but yet that product line for the company drives a ton of revenue. So looking at how core it is to the enterprise's revenue stream over the next 20 years. And then I always want to know whether or not it's in the roadmap to be commercialized or perhaps is already in a product. Because there are tons of great ideas, but if there's something that is not going to see the light of day for 20 years, it has really no value. A patent on that has no value. But if it's something that's in the product now or just to be released, or they're developing it or making it, that weighs heavily on the value, because you know it's going to be in a product. Once it's out there in the marketplace, people are going to want to copy it, and that is likely to draw infringers into infringing on that patent, which would make it valuable. And then there's always a timing issue. You have to file your patents, at least for most foreign countries, before you publicly release it or commercialize it. In the US, we have a 1-year grace period, which means you can release it in your product or publish details on it, and then that starts a 1-year clock in which you have to file your patent. Ideally, you want to do it beforehand to preserve your foreign rights, and there's other reasons to do it beforehand. But where are we with regard to that time window? And if it's going to be released next week and you want to pursue some foreign rights, you might move that idea to the top of the list and let the other ones be covered in later on, maybe in your next evaluation cycle. Because once it's been released or that 1-year window is expired, you've given that idea to the public domain. People can freely copy it. It is not your idea anymore. So very much patents have to be filed early in the process and very speculatively before you know whether or not it has commercial success or whether there'll be infringers. Another thing to look at is some innovation is almost impossible to determine whether or not somebody else is infringing it, right? Say it's a chip that goes deep into a data center that's used internal to an enterprise. What are the chances you're going to be able to figure out whether or not your competitor is actually using that chip or that circuit? Very hard to do. So if you were ever to try and use that patent and assert it against them, you would have no idea whether or not you could do it, right? So observability is a big factor as you're thinking about different ideas, and the ones that can be observed and readily ascertain that they have infringement are ones that should be prioritized over others. Another thing to look at is the likelihood, if you file a patent, will it ever be issued, right? So there are some areas at the patent office that just don't like to ever issue cases. And there are tools available that will tell you the statistics for these different cases. And in fact, we use one where you can put in your idea at the earliest stages and it'll give a guess on where it's going to land at the patent office, and then it'll tell you the statistics of how that section of the patent office deliberates. So business methods are treated very poorly. GUIs are treated very, very poorly. And there's, of course, some things that are not patentable at all, genes in and of themselves and so forth. Medical procedures, human-performed medical procedures are not patentable. Tax optimization schemes are not patentable. So, know beforehand, because you can file a patent and find out that the examiner says that this just doesn't even qualify, isn't the sort of subject matter that can be patented. So knowing that beforehand, before you invest all that time to have it written up and argued and so forth, that you have a hopeless cause, is a good thing to know. And then finally, there's certain technology that is just hard to enforce, right? It's the sort of thing that if you go to court, there's a good chance you're going to find your patent does not get enforced in the way that you want it to get enforced. And sometimes that can be, the patent is to a technology that the courts like to overturn enforcement. So that happens a lot in the software area, especially for more abstract software concepts. Those are really hard to enforce. Business methods, the same sort of things the patent office treats poorly are also the sorts of things that the courts will also treat poorly. And then thinking about, if it is enforced, what the damages might be. So you can write a claim so it covers 1% of the scenarios associated with the given product, or you can write a claim where it'll cover 99%. So can you go after a large enough, have a damages model that would be large enough to make patent enforcement something somebody would want to do? So, I had a client that sold an item, it sold for less than $1, right? And the volumes of it were so small that the most that they could hope to have as a premium because of their patented invention was just pennies. And the volumes were just not that huge. So if you took the cost of the patents and divided that out by the unit sales, that person had to raise the price of their product by almost double, right? And that was the sort of thing that made no sense, right? It only made sense to the patent attorney that would write your patent. But, you want to be protecting something valuable enough such that damages models would support enforcement of the patent. So with that, there's a million other things you could look at or consider, but those are the major things, I think, is go run through those factors and, starting at the top, and hopefully you live in a land of abundance where there's plenty of ideas so that you can critically look at them and decide which ones are worthy of spending your precious budget. So with that, thank you very much. Remember to like and subscribe this video, and if you have any questions, you can add them to the comments below, or just let us know and we'll try and get to them in a future video. Thank you.